Good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Stark, and welcome to the fourth video in the series in which I am calling Stark Silver Linings. In this series, if you haven't been watching, we are taking a look at just what I learn from making mistakes in Starcraft 2, and hopefully to become a better player. Now, I haven't been able to play recently due to work, school, end of the term, all that kind of jazz. And so I've just been sort of looking over some of my old replays, see if I can find anything kind of interesting. I found a couple of ZvZ games. As I mentioned previously in the last video, that I don't really like ZvZ. It's one of my least favorite matchups. So I found a couple of games that I learned from them a lot, actually, in how to deal with ZvZ, especially in this game against my opponent in the blue corner, the Rapist. And his name is actually quite apt for what happens in this game. This game, it's actually completely my fault why I lose, because I misinterpret what he says. I misinterpret the words, as you're going to see what the words actually are. This is a very friendly game too. I mean, we're having this nice little banter going back and forth, which is it's great. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like Starcraft 2, is the community is actually really nice. So much more than a lot of other games I've played. I've come across a few bad apples, but hey, nothing's perfect. And as long as you have fun, right? That's all that's really important. And even this game, we kind of have an equal opinion on ZvZ. We don't like it very much because, yeah, you get 6 pulled a lot, you get 8 pulled a lot. It just sort of happens, especially on the ladder. Ladder can be extremely cheesy at times. And see, this is where I sort of make my first mistake. He says, let's have a nice skilled macro game. To me, macro is getting to 200 supply as quick as you can. Both people doing that as quick as you possibly can, and then having this big, huge battle in the middle of the map. Probably killing these rocks in the process, because that would just be awesome. But that doesn't happen in this game, because as you can see, it's only 9 minutes long. And, you know, I sort of agree. After the fact, I scouted him and said, oh, great, he doesn't have a pool. Because I've actually had this conversation before, where I was talking with my opponent, and it's like, let's have a macro game. And then I scouted his base, and he bloody 6-pulled me. I'm like, well, you mind-tricked me. Shame on you. This guy, he doesn't really mind-trick me. It's partly because I misinterpret the words. Because if someone tells me, hey, let's have a macro game, I'll be like, yeah, let's have a macro game. I'm going to play super greedy because that's what you're going to do, and that's the kind of play style that I like. And yeah, I sometimes cheese toss a lot, just because they do have a pretty nasty death ball. I cheese him when I get away with it, just because, hey, why not? He agrees, which is nice. You know, we have apparently very similar play styles, which is always fun to come across. So what exactly are we doing in this game? I'm always going for a hatchery first, because hey, why not? He's like, oh, let's have a macro game. He doesn't have a pool. So, let's make an early hatch. It's a great idea. Play a super greedy game. Get that macro going. Whereas, in fact, what he's actually doing is, it looks like there's a 13 or 14 pool into speedlings, which is a great idea. And this is what I actually learned from in this game. He actually teaches me about early ZvZ pressure, which I'm very grateful for, and as you'll see in the next 2 parts of the video, I actually make use of early ZvZ pressure. I think I actually try to do the exact build that he's doing in the next portion, but I make a slight change to it as well. In this game, I'm thinking, hey, he left an overlord here. Great, I can get a free overlord kill. Whereas in actuality, this is his plan all along. He completely mind games me this entire time. And he's like, he even says so. It's like, oh, great, that's cute. You used a creep tumor to kill that overlord, which I really didn't need to do. I could have injected, I could have got more units out, but I didn't, because I'm still in the mindset of, hey, let's have this big economy-driven macro game where we're both going to play super greedy, because why the hell not? It sounds like a great idea. But, on the other hand, he's got a bunch of Zerglings already. He's got 18 Zerglings to my 22 workers. I believe at one point I actually have the same amount of workers that he does Zerglings. And obviously, that's not a good idea. And he even says so about that Overlord. It's like, it's there to die, because it does its job. It sees that I have completely nothing. I have no units on the field. It doesn't see that I had a Roach One building, but it doesn't really matter at this point, because my Roach One's going to be done by the time these Zerglings hit. But he's got, where is it here, 28 Zerglings to my 30 workers. And I've got a hatchery. I don't have a spine. Like, this is, I should have built a spine crawler earlier, but by the time this is hitting, it didn't even click into me. So as you can see, his name is, as I mentioned earlier, his name is quite apt for this, because there's just nothing I can do at this point. I just completely misinterpreted his words, which is, hey, it's not, everyone makes mistakes, right? But this actually taught me a very valuable lesson, is to, A, read between the bloody lines, for starters, and B, don't necessarily give up playing greedy. Well, don't necessarily play greedy when someone says, let's make a macro heavy game. Why the hell not? You know, sort of be on your toes still, because this mistake I made in this game is, he said, let's play a macro heavy game, and I said, sure, why not? I misinterpreted, and I wasn't expecting that kind of a push, despite the fact when I actually did scout this, I did see, I did see that he had his gas, so that should have been my first clue. Oh, he's got gas, he's got one gas and his pool building, he's probably getting speedlings, which is, you know, the best thing to do really in this sort of situation. So he completely just mind juked me, because I wasn't actually paying attention. I misinterpreted his words, basically. But all in all, I learned a lot about early Zerg pressure and how effective it can be. I mean, obviously behind this, even if it wasn't as effective, I would have expected like a hatchery here. The second he started attacking aggressively, like this, I would have expected him to drop a hatch right here, because he's also floating in money. Like, massively floating in money right now. So dropping a hatch here and starting to get that second economy, or starting to build that economy going after the early pressure hit is a great idea, because you can do the damage and then expand behind it, and then have your opponent playing catch-up, which is always a great idea, especially playing against a ZvZ. And hopefully we'll see that in the next two parts. So stay tuned. Hello, and welcome to the second part of this 3-part video of ZvZ Shenanigans. Well, hopefully you watched the first part and not just skip to this part, because that would be kinda silly, since this is a progressive learning curve of what I learned through all 3 games. And this game against my opponent, the Red Zerg, Lucky, I think this is actually the first game that we've taken a look at where I played on the ladder where I was not the red player. I know it's a 50-50 chance that I'm going to be red or blue, because those are the only 2 options in a 1v1 ladder. But hey, it's nice to be blue sometimes. Anyways, if you didn't watch the first part, we are sort of learning what I don't like about ZvZ and what I learned from these games, because they're all about, you know, just simple ZvZ shenanigans. And on this map, on Newkirk? That's what this is Newkirk, isn't it? Yes. We have my opponent Lucky, the Red Zerg, which is nice. I like the names I'm actually coming across in ZvZ, and especially in these ones. In the previous one, I had myself up against the Rapist, and he was a nice guy. Taught me some things about early Zerg pressure, which I sort of use. I learned how I really shouldn't get mind tricked. I do like how these overlords are almost on parallel trajectories, and they almost sort of collide here. And this one even sort of turns to avoid the collision, despite the fact the physics doesn't matter. These two can fly right over each other and nothing happens. It would be amusing if they would to collide and explode and make overlord babies or something, I don't know. It's late when I'm doing this, but hey, it's fine. So what I'm sort of doing is I'm taking a page out of my opponent from the last match, and I'm trying to put on this early Zerg pressure with speedlings, because hey, why not? It sounded like a great idea. And I'm also starting to use overlord placement. This is something I didn't do in the first game, as you noticed. My overlords were sort of paying attention to my base, but not really anywhere else. Whereas in this game, I sort of place one, kind of just outside this ramp. Obviously, I should have placed it sort of here, because it's in a good position right now, because anything that comes across, if you just click it from here to here, it's going to follow this path. Like where the mass is, it's going to follow this path, it's going to run right about there, and the Overlord would see it, because it's on this nice little high ground building. And these buildings are really nice, especially against like Terran, that can run their Marines down, because these count as high ground, and the Overlord can't actually be seen or shot at unless they lift the barracks or build something else. But he did have the right idea and put his Overlord where my expansion should be, which I'm just about building now, at the 430 mark. So this is sort of an adaptive build that I did from the previous game. I kind of took what he did and I adapted to my sort of place on what I thought I should do. I planned on hitting early pressure, and I planned on expanding behind it to take that economic advantage. Because hey, I can. My opponent, Lucky, he's actually got one of the right responses. I wouldn't say it's the best response, because Banelings against Zerglings, yes, they are really, really good, as Banelings kill Zerglings really effectively. The problem with Banelings against, especially if they're going mass Zerglings, is you can out-micro them, you can sacrifice few Zerglings to take out the Banelings and then just sort of swamp them in the rest of your Zerglings. The other option, which is the option that I sort of do, is to make a bloody Roach War and make some Roaches. Roaches hard counter Banelings. Just completely negates Baneling pressure. Because even if you kill all of my Zerglings, I'm still going to have Roaches that can just kind of munch on your Zergling face. He does have the nice Zergling skin. It's kind of neat. Look like little dinosaurs. Hey, even have you little eyes. Cool. Anyways, so he's sort of got the right response. I mean, I didn't know he had Banelings until I sort of ran up this ramp and saw, oh, well damn, he's got a Baneling. So I better wait for my Roaches to build. Or I can just try to sacrifice a couple of Zerglings. This is sort of something that I like to do. You sacrifice 3 or 4 Zerglings, and it gets rid of the Banelings, basically. That's the entire point of it. But again, Roaches, better idea. I haven't really taken advantage of any type of early pressure this game yet. As we saw in the previous one, the game was over basically by this time. Because Lucky actually did the response of what I should have done in the first game, is he actually made units behind his economy, and that's a great idea to do. I don't know why I didn't think of that, and that Baneling just kind of went for a ride. It's quite far actually. What, to there? It's like a siege tank range. That Baneling just catapulted that Zergling quite far. I really like the new physics in Heart of the Swarm. They are just top notch. Sort of having this standoff here as I'm making these Roaches. As I said, as we'll see, Roaches kind of hard counter Banelings. It's just effect of the unit. I haven't really taken advantage of his early pressure yet, but he can still see. He knows I'm pouring out units. Like completely knows it. That's what's happening. I missed the Banelings. No, let's go back. Kind of want to see this. Looked funny. I think it looked funny. Too far. Where is it? Yeah, just wait, it's almost coming up. Probably right about here. Yeah, too slow. Let's watch this slow motion. Come on, Zerglings. go this is something you don't really want to do with Zerglings, to be honest, despite the fact it's really amusing. I mean, I just kind of sacrificed a whole bunch of Zerglings there. I've only really lost Zerglings, so has he, but I've lost more. And yeah, I'm blue, right, I'm blue, he's red. He's basically lost a bunch of Banelings, because I've lost Zerglings. Banelings are more expensive, because they take up a lot of minerals, and actually a surprising amount. Banelings take up a surprising amount of money, just because they're so expendable, and you don't realize just how much money you spend on them until you actually go back and look. I mean, let's think about this for a second. A Zergling costs 50 to make 2 Zerglings, right? So it's 25 minerals apiece, and then each Baneling costs another 25 minerals and 25 gas. So it's basically 50 minerals and 25 gas per Baneling. And it basically just dies. It's an effective killing machine, don't get me wrong, it can kill a lot of stuff, but right now, as we've seen, he's actually losing more money making Banelings than I am making Roaches and Zerglings, because Banelings are just a lot more, they're not as cost effective, and this is something that I learned from this game, is to use cost effective units, especially when defending. The Spire was kind of weirdly placed, to be honest, because he could have placed it back here, because I never even got back here. If he placed it back here, he could have gotten some mutas out, because the Spire would have finished before I even got close to killing this off. I probably would have had too many units for the mutas to deal with anyways, because he probably only could have gotten out 4, maybe 5. But it would have helped, because it would have been like, oh crap. Because the way my thinking process would work is like, oh, well damn, he's got mutas out now. I don't have a layer tech. I don't even have an Evo chamber. I've got 2 queens, and he could have had maybe 4 to 5 mutas. He could have, probably wouldn't have been able to defend against this many Roaches and Zerglings, but for the sake of argument, let's say he could. Let's say he managed to fend me off or scare me off, because I'm a big chicken, and if I see mutas on the field, and I know that I don't have layer tech, my first reaction is to, oh crap, I better run, because I'm not going to count them. That's just me. That's one of the problems that I sort of try to deal with, is I need to learn to look at how many units they actually have. So he might have been able to scare me off with maybe 5 mutas, and it would have, set me back to my base. And then he could have come and actually harassed me. And then I would count his muta and be like, oh, well damn, he's only got like 5. Because that's what I see attacking me now. Because I'm trying to defend. And then I may have just come back out here, but anyways. So that's a couple of things I learned from this sort of early, well actually this was starting to get into the early mid game at the 10-minute mark. I kind of failed at the early pressure part, because he actually did what I should have done in the first game, as I mentioned, is actually build units. Even if you're going for a macro heavy game, it's a good idea to build stuff early on. So we'll take a look at what happens in the third part of this video, so stick around. Hello and welcome to the third and final part of this 3-part video of ZvZ shenanigans, in which I am learning from the multiple well, I don't really make that many mistakes, but it's a progressive learning curve, as we've seen. In the first game against my opponent the Rapist, I sort of got completely annihilated because I got mind tricked and I fell for early game pressure, and so I've been sort of taking that early game pressure that I learned from him in that game and applying it to other games, as we saw in the previous game against Lucky, and now on what bloody map is it? Alkali Wastes, I want to say. I know something with the wastes because it's kind of a desert. I'm pretty sure it's alkali. It starts with an A, but hey, you know what map it is. Hopefully, at least one of us does. It's a good sign. Anyways, as you can see, my opponent in this game is the Red Zerg, Mr. Happy. Again, I'm the blue Zerg for some strange reason. I'm normally red, as we've seen in other videos, but hey, 50% chance. However, I did notice that I actually won as the blue Zerg, so maybe that's a thing, I don't know. We'll find out. Anyways, again, I'm sort of trying to do this early pressure that I learned in the first game, in the first part of this video. I'm sort of trying to learn this early pressure. And I'm doing so, I'm also sort of using the Overlord scouting a lot better, especially on this map. It's actually really nice, because there's basically only two main paths. You can either go up this way, and in this way, or you can go up this way, and in this way. Hey, look, there's two main paths, and one of them is blocked by rocks. Unlike with Newkirk, where there was the sort of the main street that you go around, then you can go the long way around on Newkirk as well. And right now, both of us, myself and Mr. Happy, we're actually using Overlords pretty much the exact same way. Actually even positioned in the same positions, actually. This one's sort of heading around to the natural expansion, and this one's sort of blocking off this one. This one could be down here to just, mirror it, but hey, that's alright. So what do we learn so far? So far, we learned that early pressure in ZvZ is great. However, we also learned that banelings are not necessarily the best answer to Zergling pressure. And my argument behind this is, yes, banelings do kill Zerglings remarkably well. However, it is much more cost effective to make Zerglings than it is to make banelings. Banelings require a lot more money and a lot more investment into them, and if you don't use them effectively, it is rather harmful to your economy, because unlike Zerglings that can kill multiple units, banelings are one-shot wonders. They go in, they die. If they don't kill anything, well, that's just their problem. Whereas with Zerglings, you can send them in and they can do significantly more damage if they can live. And right now, I'm sort of sending out these first wave of Zerglings. This is a little earlier, actually it's about 2 minutes earlier than the previous game, because I sort of learned a bit better timing to actually hit. Because before, he actually had an army to sort of stop me, and it kind of delayed until I got my roaches out. Whereas this time, it's hitting about 2 minutes earlier, but I have less units. But he doesn't have anything to sort of stop this. So I get a free queen kill, which is always great, because queens are incredibly useful. I go after this spine crawler. This is actually a good position for the spine crawler, because against the gas I can't get a full surround, so it's actually a really good position for it. Normally, as we see, what I like to do is I like to put my pool next to my extractors, for that exact same reason. Sometimes even stick an evo chamber, like right here, or even here, basically. I rarely ever stick pools and stuff behind the mineral line, except like roach ones or something like that that I want to keep out of the way. I really shouldn't be doing this. On this map, it's not such a bad idea, because it's in the back and nice and protected. So what has he got? Yeah, he's trying to make the banelings again, but he actually doesn't really have any gas right now, because I've managed to actually do this sort of early game pressure well, first game, as we saw, I got completely destroyed by it because I wasn't paying attention and I got mind-juked and misinterpreted my opponent's words. In the second game, I sort of got a little bit of practice at it, and it worked out kind of well. In this game, I've gone more into that early pressure, and I actually got the expand behind it better. I got this rolling a little quicker. I didn't make as many drones on the main base, and I'm actually not making all that many right now. I'm going more into heavy roaches, because I saw that he's starting to fortify this position. He's not mining a whole lot right now, which is kind of weird, but hey, sometimes you just forget. Happens to everybody now and then. It's okay. And so I'm going into this more. After I did that big economic damage to him, I'm sort of kind of going in for this Roach Sledgehammer. This is the thing that I want to kind of stress, because as I said earlier, my argument as to why banelings are not they're a good counter, but they're not the best counter, I should say. They're effective if you can use them properly, whereas in this level of play and the type of games that I'm normally coming up against, which is generally mid-level platinum, mid to low-level platinum, the occasional low-level diamond leaguer. Maybe that's being a little too generous to myself, but generally platinum games, mid to low-level platinum for the most part. There's a couple of things that can happen. A, banelings can be microed around by zerglings. That's the one thing that can happen. As we saw, I sorta juked a couple in the previous game. Two, roaches are just they're a hard counter to banelings. That's why I don't really see banelings as a viable, especially in this kind of situation. When you're behind, banelings are not a cost-effective unit. Banelings are the kind of the good aggressive unit, and as I said, if you could actually sneak them into a mineral line and kill all the drones, because you only need 4 banelings to just completely wreck a mineral line, and that's where the effectiveness comes in. But if you can't use them that way, they're not a very cost-effective unit. As we discussed in the previous portion of this video, the cost of banelings is actually quite a bit greater than the cost of zerglings. Costs in just flat resource cost, it costs twice as much to make a baneling than it does to make a zergling, as it takes 50 minerals and 25 gas per baneling, whereas it only takes 25 minerals per zergling, since you get 2 of them at a time for 50. So it's much more cost effective to just make zerglings. And if you can micro zerglings around banelings better, you can win with flat zerglings anyways. So banelings, they do have the place in the Zerg army, and they do have the place in ZvZ. However, in this sort of situation, it's not exactly the best thing to use. I mean, he had his layer tech, which was a good idea. Getting the layer tech, that's a fantastic idea, especially in this situation. If he could have held off a little better, he had his layer tech, he could have dropped a Spire, and again, Spire probably would have scared the crap out of me, because I've gone heavy into ground, I've gone heavy into roaches, I haven't got my layer tech, despite the fact that this is almost 12 minutes in, I still haven't gotten my layer tech. So it's something that I should have done, but I kept applying the pressure, which is, it's an effective way to win, is applying pressure. The problem that I sort of found in my play, in just rewatching this video, is if I managed to fail, if I did not have as much pressure as I did, if it wasn't as effectively used as I did, I would have been far behind in tech advantage, despite the fact that I've got a lot of money and a lot of everything else. I mean, I've got the supply, which is always padded. I mean, I pretty much had this game dead to rights after this sort of first big hit and kind of wrecking his economy here. That put me really far ahead. So I was in a very safe position this entire game, but I sort of let that get the better of me, and that's something that, because I'm making this series basically so I become a better player. Even though I won a game, I still found issues in how I went about it. Call me a perfectionist, call me what you want, but I feel that I could have done better overall. I could have teched better, I could have actually gotten this into a layer and then maybe built a Spire afterwards, and those are the kind of things that I need to start paying attention to, not just making these, pressure. I mean, pressure's great. Doing harassment, that wins games. Every time. If you harass better, if you have more guys than your opponent, you're going, most of the time you're probably going to win. I wouldn't say all the time you're going to win, because you might screw up. You might hit the pause button and then accidentally hit the surrender button trying to unpause, because that has happened to a lot of players. It can happen to you, don't get me wrong. But anyways, as we've seen, as I digress, as I should say, as we've seen through this 3-part video and this sort of progressive learning curve on ZvZ shenanigans and the things that I learned about early game ZvZ pressure, I hope you learned something. What I learned is ZvZ is actually kind of fun. As now that I said earlier in the video that ZvZ, and in previous videos, that ZvZ is probably my least favorite of matchups, but after rewatching these and reflecting back on how I played them, it's actually remarkably fun to me. I don't know why I'm sort of getting this change of heart. I'm probably going to feel a lot different in the morning, especially next time I come against a ZvZ and I get 6 pulled. I'm going to be like, hate ZvZ. So bloody awful. But actually looking at these and having this sort of pressure macro style game sort of going, it's actually kind of fun. So next time when the reason why I made this 3-part video is I had these 3 games and they're all kind of short. Just kind of play something so there's entirely boring talking while nothing's going on. And so I made these because they're all kind of short games, and it's a nice progressive learning curve. And if I get more like this, where I sort of learn from multiple games that are sort of played in relatively close amount of time together, like these were all played in the same day, a couple hours apart on each of them, but they're all played on the same day. And I sort of learned from each of them. And if I get that, especially if against the same race, because that's just awesome, because then it's a really true progression. Like if I get 3 Terran games in a row, 3 Protoss games in a row, or even just 3 games that they're all really short but they all have good lessons in them, I'll probably, do more of these sort of combined progressive learning curve videos. But anyways, as I said, I hope you learned something. I kinda did. Good luck out there. My name is Stark, and I shall see you next time.